Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Lamentations, starting with the first chapter. And, just a bit of context for the book of Lamentations. When you look this up, it's mostly agreed upon that the author was more than likely Jeremiah, who witnessed the destruction of Jerusalem, the siege, and all of that was done by the Babylonians, right? And so that's pretty much the time period when the events, right? Because the book of Lamentations is pretty much mournings, right? Mourning the destruction of Jerusalem in a poetic sense, and it switches perspective, right? Sometimes it's from someone witnessing the things that are happening. Sometimes it's from the perspective of the Israel as a nation. Sometimes even from like Jerusalem, right? Personified. Nonetheless, the book of Lamentations is, just as the name suggests, a lamentation about the calamities that befell Israel at this time, and more in particular the kingdom of Judah, right, primarily. So let's go into it. This is the book of Lamentations, chapter 1, verse 1, and like I mentioned, this would be right around the time of Jeremiah, right? He would be around this time. You would also have Daniel, of course, Ezekiel, right? These men were all alive around this time in different locations, of course. So this is Lamentations chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "How doth the city sit solitary, that was full of people? How is she become as a widow?" Right. So beginning in here now, also when you I believe I was reading some context about this, and it mentioned in the Septuagint that this first verse is prefaced with the writings along the lines of, this is what Jeremiah wrote concerning the destruction of Jerusalem as he witnessed it. Nevertheless, anyway, so why is it saying, "How doth the city sit solitary," right? That was full of people. Solitary meaning pretty much alone, right? Abandoned, desolate. Because what happened was you had Nebuchadnezzar, right, which was the king of Babylon at this time, sent his troops and whatnot, and they came and laid siege to the city. So at this time, Zedekiah was the last so-called king of Judah, right? He was set up there by Nebuchadnezzar, and due to his disobedience, right, not taking heed to the warnings of the Lord by Jeremiah, instead being egged on by the Egyptians, he revolted against the Babylonians. Hence, there was a siege. And post the siege, there were people destroyed, right? They killed a bunch of Israelites. They took a bunch of them captives, and they left a few, in the land. So here, as it says, how is the city solitary that was full of people? Because at one time, Jerusalem was filled with Israelites and, all of that, right? How is she become as a widow, right? So you can imagine, like a widow who is maybe not in a good case, right? Her husband is gone, maybe she has children, maybe she doesn't, but she's all alone, basically. She that was great among the nations, and princess among the provinces, how is she become tributary, right? Tributary meaning subject, right? Basically servant, because obviously we were subjected and put under the rule of the Babylonians at this time. So at one point, being the chief of the regions, right, in that area, the Levant, now we had become, been brought down to this low state. Verse 2, "She weepeth sore in the night, and her tears are on her cheeks," right? So this is speaking like collectively about Israel, but it's personifying the nation as a she. It says here, "Among all her lovers, she hath none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They are become her enemies," right? So on one note, you can imagine if like a woman being abandoned by her lovers, her friends, and all of that. But on the other note, right, let's get a quick precept to back that up, because Israel, when he personified the nation as a woman, she would be likened unto a woman that played the harlot, okay, against the Most High. So let's actually go real quick to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 30, verse 14. Okay, dealing with the lovers here again, right? So the lovers here would be likened unto the other nations, and really in particular their gods, right? Their ways and their gods. And they're likened onto lovers because ultimately, when you deal in this analogical sense, the husband or the lover of Israel would be the Most High. But by Israelites following and worshiping and serving these other idols and these other false gods, they would be likened onto other lovers. Like a woman that has many lovers is not being faithful, right? So they would be likened onto these other lovers here, which the precepts I'm going to get are going to, substantiate that point right there. So this is Jeremiah 30 and 14, and it reads, "All thy lovers have forgotten thee; they seek thee not. For I have wounded thee with the wound of an enemy." And what does the Lord mean by that? Meaning that he turned himself against us, as where he was for our good, he now became for our evil, right? Where he set up these other nations to come against us, weakened us, brought calamities upon us. That is likened unto that wound, as of the wound of an enemy, with the chastisement of a cruel one, for the multitude of thine iniquity, because thy sins were increased. So because of the wickedness and the sins that our people kept on committing, it forced the Lord's hand to basically fight against us. But as you can see here, it says, right, all thy lovers have forgotten thee. So and another precept is, let me actually just pull it up here. I think it's Judges. Let's see, cry. Yeah, Judges 10 and 14. It reads here, "Go and cry unto the gods which ye have chosen. Let them deliver you in the time of your tribulation." See, so it's still the same sentiment of Israel being unfaithful to the Lord, having many lovers, serving other gods. Okay, and the Lord is saying here, so now that you find yourself in this situation, go and cry unto them, go call unto them, right? Since you wanted to go and serve them, and let's see how they deliver you now. And similarly in Lamentations, right, it's saying here, as it says, among all her lovers, she hath none to comfort her. So none of those nations, none of those gods, none of them came to deliver us when we were going through this. Okay, now this is also Ezekiel 16 and 33. And when you read in this chapter, the Lord likens Israel to this woman, right, that he took, cleaned up, gave her all these good gifts, took care of her, and then she ended up using that to commit adultery, right? So Ezekiel 16 and 33, they give gifts to all whores, but thou givest thy gifts to all thy lovers, and hirest them, that they may come on to thee on every side for thy whoredom. So the Lord is saying here that you have played, you are such a whore to the point where by convention, on regularly, by default, people pay harlots, right, to go in onto them. When you go to a harlot house or whatnot, prostitution, whatever the case is, you pay the chick and then you go and deal with her. Lord is saying here, you pay the people. Imagine a whore that's paying you to come and deal with her. Okay, that's pretty much the level that you're on, right? As it says, they give gifts to all whores, but thou givest thy gifts to all thy lovers, as it says, and hirest them, right? And so when you liken Israel onto a woman, who would the lovers be, right? They would be like the gods that Israel went and served. So coming back to Lamentations chapter 1, continuing in verse 2, all her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They are become her enemies, right? So all the so-called allies, the nations that led us astray, now in this time, they've turned their backs on us, right? Example being Egypt. Egypt was a part of the one of the primary nation that encouraged Zedekiah to revolt. And when he revolted, and they even tried to help Israel by seeing the forces of the Babylonians, immediately they retreated. Verse 3, Judah is gone into captivity because of affliction. Right, so as I mentioned in the beginning, at this time, primarily, Salakia, primarily at this time, the northern kingdom had been already removed from the land. So those that you had remaining were mainly the southern kingdom, right? The kingdom of Judah. When it says Judah here, it's really referring to the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. But you also had a mix of some of the northern kingdom, right? The tribes of the northern kingdom in there, right? Because some of them mingled and dwelt, within this region because of all the wickedness going on in the northern kingdom at that time. As it says, Judah is gone into captivity because of affliction and because of great servitude. She dwelleth among the heathen. Yeah, so when the Babylonians came and they caused this chaos and destruction, they took us captive to the land of Babylon, and right, we were there surrounded with amongst heathens and subject unto them, right? As it says, it mentions the affliction and servitude. And then our people also started to pick up their customs. She dwelleth among the heathen, she findeth no rest. And I believe one example we can go to is the book of Psalms, chapter 137, verse 1. See, an experience of the captivity. Now, I believe this was when we were taken captive to Babylon, right? So it says, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. And so Lamentations is like a more in-depth description of the feeling, right, of remorse and pain that our people felt at this time, having had our temple destroyed, the city destroyed, our people killed and taken captives. It says, we hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How shall we sing the Lord Yahweh's song in a strange land? Then it goes on more and more. So now going back to Lamentations chapter 1, as it says here, she dwelleth among heathens, she findeth no rest, right? All her persecutors overtook her between the straits. So when the Lord brought this, there was no escape. All those that came against us, right? Wherever we try to run, wherever we try to flee, they caught us. Verse 4, and also you had the Edomites, which is mentioned in 1 Ezra, the 4th chapter, that helped the Babylonians at this time. And I believe that's also mentioned in the book of Obadiah. Verse 4, the ways of Zion do mourn, because none come to the solemn feast. And the ways meaning the roads, right? The paths, right? When you go into the ways, it says here, the rock, way, road, distance, journey, right? So going back to Lamentations, as it says, the ways of Zion do mourn. Now, keep in mind, this is written in a poetic form. So there's a lot of personification. There's a lot of, metaphorical ways, poetic sayings. Obviously, roads and land and paths don't actually mourn. But this is just, it's poetic, right? It's to emphasize the sorrow, the sadness, okay? As it says, the ways of Zion do mourn, because none come to the solemn feast, because the sanctuary is destroyed. It's empty. It's like a wasteland. Nobody's coming to the holy days. Nobody's coming to keep the Sabbath service. Nobody's coming to do any of that, right? All her gates are desolate. Her priests sigh. Her virgins are afflicted, and she is in bitterness. Right. Once again, because of all the hell that we were going through. Now, keep in mind, this wasn't just the at the pivotal moment where the destruction was happening, right? Where the walls were actually being broken down and all of that. This involved the time during the siege where you had people starving to death, people suffering, and then eventually leading up to when the Babylonians finally broke through. Okay, and then continued the affliction. Her adversaries are the chief. Her enemies prosper. For the Lord Yahweh hath afflicted her for the multitude of her transgressions. And that is like we read in the book of Jeremiah 30, right? Which I think I moved past that. Yeah, as the Lord said here, that he hath wounded us with the wound of an enemy because of the multitude of our iniquities. See? So as it says here, her adversaries are chief, her enemies prosper. So they got the upper hand over us because the Lord put them in that position as a punishment for us. Her children are gone into captivity before the enemy. Verse 6, and from the daughter of Zion, all her beauty is departed. So the Lord stripped us of the beauty here, right? In comparison, like in respect to the nation would be, us being in a good state. Our cities are good. Our people are at peace. The land is prospering. The harvest is good, right? Everything is good. Like during the time of the reign of King Solomon, right? In the first 40 years at peace, that would be likened onto the beauty, right? Where everything is in order and we're in a high position and other nations are paying tribute onto us. But the Lord stripped all that away, as it says here, and likened that onto the beauty being departed. Her princes are become like harts that find no pasture. And a hart is like a deer. Pasture obviously is like grass where they go food for them, right? Because they're herbivores. So can you imagine that, basically likening her princes onto starving deers? And in particular, what you know about the princes are, they are, the leaders, the ones in high position. So if of anybody, they would be the ones eating well, right? They would be the ones in good, fit shape. But as we can see here, it says, they are like harts that find no pasture. They are gone without strength before the pursuer. See, so before the face of those that came against us, right, the troops and all of that, we were weak, couldn't do anything. Verse 7, Jerusalem remembered in the days of her affliction and of her miseries all her pleasant things that she had in the days of old. And similarly, when we read in Psalms 137, it says that, right? How they wept when they remembered Zion. See if I can go back to it. Maybe I had it on here. Psalms 137. Right, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. So you can imagine seeing the destruction and literally like seeing the temple destroyed, burnt, people, dead bodies, right? People screaming, like being carried captive. And now you're here and you're remembering how at one point the temple was there. How at one point, we would have these holy days. At one point, there was Josiah's Passover, right? All of these things, our people were good. And now gone. So they're mourning. Where are we at? Verse 7, right? Jerusalem remembered in the days of her affliction and of her miseries all her pleasant things that she had in the days of old, when her people fell into the hand of the enemy and none did help her. See, so when the calamities came upon us, right, then we remembered those things. The adversaries saw her and did mock at her Sabbaths, because as these things were happening, the neighboring nations, the particular nation that came against us, right, the Babylonians here, which really they were like the Assyrians. The Assyrians were the ruling class of Babylon at this time, but nevertheless, they didn't feel bad for us, right? These nations didn't come and try to help us. They looked at it as an opportunity for them to take advantage as well, to rejoice, to mock, to have us in reproach. Verse 8, Jerusalem hath grievously sinned, therefore she is removed. So as we go through these chapters, you'll hear the sentiment of like mourning for the pain, for the destruction, but then also acknowledging the sins that we've committed against the Lord in hopes that he will have mercy upon us. Jerusalem hath grievously sinned, therefore she is removed. And also, as sad as it may sound, at the end of the day, it's not like the Lord brought this overnight. He sent prophets over and over and over again to warn. When you read the ministry, the writings of majority of these prophets, they're pretty much saying the same thing. Like when you dig down to the base conceptual part of all the things that the prophets spoke about, at the core of it, it's about Israel. Stop your disobedience, stop your idolatry, stop your wickedness, stop the things that you're doing to upset the Lord, and just repent and turn back to the Heavenly Father. And then it talks about the future judgments, but the future judgments, the present judgments, the past judgments, they were all a effect or a reaction to the wickedness our people were committing, the iniquities. That's why you hear that sentiment over and over and over again in the book of Jeremiah, the book of Isaiah, the book of Ezekiel, the book of Zephaniah, the book of Zechariah. All these books, the prophets are saying the same thing. Okay? Because our people were being hard-headed. And we're reading it now, but these were things they were actually saying to the people then. And yet they didn't listen. And so this finally came upon us. Anyway, verse 8, Jerusalem hath grievously sinned, therefore she is removed. So because of our sins, because of our disobedience, our land was taken over, was destroyed, and pretty much we were removed from the land. All that honored her despise her. So at one point, all the other nations that we had under us, that were subject unto us, that paid tribute to us, now they looked at us in reproach. They despised us, right? Like, look at them, good for them, because they have seen her nakedness, right? So her shame, us being stripped of everything we had and being put into this low state, that shameful state. Yea, she sigheth and turneth backward. So imagine a woman that is like embarrassed in public, and she's like sighing as a form, like out of groaning, right, out of anguish, covering her face, turning around, trying to hide that embarrassment, right, trying to get out of sight. Verse 9, her filthiness is in her skirts. She remembereth not her last end. And when you go into that filthiness, there's a couple of different definitions there, but some of the other translations have the filthiness attributed to onto like a woman, a menstruous woman, right? So you have your uncleanness, and then you have sexual, right, of filthy mass, ethical and religious, ritual, and local of nations. And we know one example is when a woman is, on her menstruating, right, she becomes unclean, right? And as it says here, her filthiness is in her skirts. So you can imagine here the comparison of the uncleanness of a menstruous woman being likened onto the sins of Israel. But those sins are so apparent, it's like as if you saw the uncleanness of a menstruous woman through her skirt. Like it's pretty what's the word I'm looking for here? Explicit, but like if a woman is menstruating and then she sits, she's not wearing the appropriate attire, and then it starts to seep through her clothing, it's visible, right? And also when you look at the word here for filthiness, as we pulled up, and you look at the other use cases, right? This is H2932. You have a lot of matches in the book of Leviticus and so on like uncleanness, right? So you have one that deals with the uncleanness of a man, right? The issue of a man. So if a man, what do you call? There's that called, today we say wet dream, but it's really involuntary emission. I believe that's the term for it. But when you unleash, right, that makes you unclean, right? That uncleanness. But what I'm looking for here is Here we go. Here's an example, right? Leviticus 15 and 25. And if a woman have an issue of her blood many days out of the time of her separation, meaning today explicitly you would say she's on her period, or if it run beyond the time of her separation, so there was a set amount of time where you would put the woman would be separated because she would be unclean while she's on her period or she is menstruating. All the days of the issue of her uncleanness, right? There goes that same H29:32 again. Shall be as the days of her separation, she shall be unclean. Same thing, right? Same thing here, before the Lord for the issue of her uncleanness. So it's that same word when you go into the filthiness that we're reading of here in Lamentations. So you can imagine here the comparison being like a menstruating woman where it's visible, right, through her skirt, likened onto how the sins of Israel were, upon them. So it says here, she remembereth not her last end, meaning they didn't consider the judgment that would come for the things that they were doing. Therefore, she came down wonderfully. Now, when you see the word wonderful, don't think of the modern definition, right? People now use the term wonderful to describe something in a good sense, mostly, right? Wow, that was wonderful, amazing. Then they use these other synonyms and bunch them together. Wonderfully here meaning like astonishingly, surprisingly, shockingly, but it's not attributed to being like in a good sense per se. Okay? Like if a plane crashes from the sky, people don't say today, oh wow, that was wonderful. They're gonna look at you like, what's up with this guy? Well, how is that wonderful? Because they're thinking of a modern definition of wonderful. It says she had no comforter, right? Because there was nobody there to comfort us in that time. As a matter of fact, our comforter turned to be our enemy, which is the Most High, as we read in Jeremiah 30. O Yahweh, behold my affliction, for the enemy hath magnified himself. So you see how interesting of a situation we found ourselves in, where we transgressed against the Lord. He brought calamity upon us, but even in that, we had nowhere else to go but to seek the Lord, but to appeal to his mercy. Verse 10, the adversary hath spread out his hand upon all her pleasant things, for she hath seen that the heathen entered into her sanctuary. Yeah, because when they came in there, remember, in the perspective of these other nations, whenever they take us over, be it the Babylonians, be it the Greeks, be it the Romans, in their mind or in their eyes, our temple is not like some sacred thing to them. To them, it's a treasure house. Wow, look, it's full of gold. They have all these gold vessels and ordinances in there. We're going to go rob it. Okay. So as it says here, right, the adversary has spread out his hand upon all her pleasant things. So all the things of value they took. For she hath seen, and we read about that in Daniel the 5th chapter, right? How you had Belshazzar drinking of the golden vessels of the Lord, which they had taken from us when they besieged us. For she hath seen that the heathen entered into her sanctuary. Yeah, so when they broke through the walls, they came up in there, they ransacked the temple, and then they destroyed it. Whom thou didst command that they should not enter into thy congregation, right? Because the temple was holy. And as a matter of fact, there were certain areas that regular people couldn't even go into. When you read in the book of 3rd Maccabees, there's actually an account of Ptolemy. I believe this is Ptolemy Philopator, or Philopator, I think that was the 4th, who I think this might have been the Battle of Raphia. This is mentioned also in Daniel 11, but after winning that, he got, all high-minded, and he came and he tried to go into the temple, right, into one of the holy places. And as we tried to stop him, he got all proud, and the Lord basically struck him down. I forget exactly what the Lord hit him with, but he pretty much just dropped. Okay, and then they dragged his ass out of there. But the point being that, due to the condition we were in, these troops, these heathens, they ran up in there, took whatever they wanted to take, entered wherever they wanted to go. Verse 11, all her people sigh. They seek bread, They have given their pleasant things for meat to relieve the soul. Yeah, so during the siege, during the famine, when there was a lack of food, people are starving, people are dying, looking for something to eat. They gave up their pleasant things, right? So their riches, their treasures, they gave it all up that they could sell it or at least exchange it for something to eat, as it says, for meat to relieve the soul, so they could live. See, O Lord, O Yahweh, and consider, for I am become vile. So here, like, we're pretty much calling on to the Lord for mercy to say, like, I mean, we're guilty, but look at the condition we're in right now. We've become pretty much worthless. Verse 12, is it nothing to you, all ye that pass by? Behold and see, if there be any sorrow like unto my sorrow, which is done unto me, wherewith the Lord hath afflicted me in the day of his fierce anger. So, look at the condition we're in. You think this is a light thing? You ever seen anything as bad as this? Right? That's pretty much the what's being said here. Verse 13, from above hath he sent fire into my bones. Right? And this is basically, this is analogical. Analogical. That's the word. I've been using that quite a lot. Let me take a look at that. Or analogous, I think is the word I'm looking for. Analogical. The hell is that? Oh, yeah, I guess I had it. Okay, so analogical means something compares two different things or is based on an analogy. So I was using the word correctly. That's good. Analogous, analogical, same thing. But the point here is this not like, it's not literal, right? Jerusalem is not a person, number one, to have fire into their bones. It's not literal, but it's emphasizing here the judgment the Lord brought upon us and how painful, how intense it was. From heaven hath he sent fire into my bones, and it prevailed against them, right, against Israel. He hath spread a net for my feet, meaning he set a trap. He hath turned me back. He hath made me desolate and faint all the day. So the Lord brought an inescapable judgment upon us that we got caught up in, and there was no getting out of it. Verse 14, the yoke of my transgressions is bound by his hand. And so you can imagine, right? The sins being upon us is likened unto a yoke. A yoke is what you put upon like the neck of like oxen to bind them together. So an example here would be if you look up yoke of oxen and you look at some images, you can see this is one example, right? The head would go in here and it would keep them, boom, just like that. And then the plow would usually be in the middle, or even if there's a cart that they would drive, it would be there. But this is to bind them to something. Okay, so there's also another example here, right? Yoke. So going back to Lamentations chapter 1, right? The yoke of my transgression is bound by his hand. So by the hand of the Lord, like he pretty much put that, that yoke is upon us. As it says, they are wreathed, meaning they're put together, they're woven together and come upon my neck. He hath made my strength to fall. So the Lord basically bound us, right? That because of our sins, he basically bound us like having a yoke upon us, upon our necks, as if we were oxen. He hath made my strength to fail. So he made us weak before our enemies, that we couldn't fight. We couldn't, prevail against them. The Lord hath delivered me into their hands, from whom I am not able to rise up. And that's why we had to succumb to the consequences of our actions. Verse 15, the Lord hath trodden underfoot all my mighty men in the midst of me. And so the mighty men would be the men of war, those that would defend the city, those that would go to war, those, the warriors. But as it says here, the Lord hath trodden underfoot all my mighty men in the midst of me. Does this mean the Most High, laced up his Timbs and stepped from the heavens upon Israelites? No, but he did this by having us be defeated and slain by the Babylonians. He hath called an assembly against me to crush my young men. echoing the same thing in the first part. The Lord hath trodden the virgin, the daughter of Judah, as in a winepress. So when you look at trotting in a winepress, trotting meaning to step on, to stomp out. So let's see, trodden in wine press. So you can see here, right? Literally, you would have grapes, you would have the wine press, and you would have people stomping on the grapes. Okay, stomping on the grapes, and you can see here as they stomp on it, eventually the blood of the grapes, it liquefies, right? And then it comes out into another area, and then they scoop it up, and then they ferment it and all of that and do whatever it is that they're going to do with it. So here's another picture. Stomp on the grapes, and then voila. So here, Judah, right, is being likened onto the grapes being stomped out, as if the Lord was stomping us out. And these are all just ways of emphasizing the destruction and what it felt like, right? It's as if we were grapes being stepped on. Verse 16, for these things I weep, mine eye runneth down with water, because the comforter that should relieve my soul is far from me. So the things that should comfort us, i.e. even not even first and foremost, the Most High, is far from us, so far that he is the one bringing this upon us, right? Secondly, the things that we would, see that would comfort us, that would bring us joy, are far gone. No food, our people are destroyed, our cities are burnt down, our children are dead, our wives are dead, we're taken captive. As it says, my children are desolate because the enemy prevailed. Zion spreadeth forth her hands, right? So she sought for help, and there is none to comfort her. The Lord Yahweh hath commanded concerning Jacob that his adversaries should be round about him. So the Lord pretty much turned those around us into our adversaries to come against us. Jerusalem is as a menstruous woman among them. So as where at one point we were honored, we've now become like a woman that is put away, filthy. Okay. Verse 18, the Lord Yahweh is righteous, for I have rebelled against his commandment. And how so? Worshiping other gods, committing murder, committing adultery, right? Judging wrong judgment, the prophets telling lies, the leaders misleading the people. As we read in Zephaniah 3, they're like evening wolves, right? That gnaw not the bone until the morning. Taking advantage of the people, taking advantage of the widows, not executing righteous judgment. These are all examples of how we rebelled against the Lord's commandment. Hear, I pray you, all people, and behold my sorrow. My virgins and my young men are gone into captivity. I called for my lovers, but they deceived me. My priests and mine elders gave up the ghost in the city. So anybody that we sought for, right, that we thought could help us, that could deliver us, as it says, they deceived me because they had no power to do anything for us, be it these nations or their gods. As it says, my priests and mine elders gave up the ghost in the city. So to give up the ghost meaning they died. More than likely because of what? Starvation. While they sought their meat to relieve their souls. See, so as they starved to death. Verse 20, behold, O Lord, O Yahweh, for I am in distress. My bowels are troubled. Mine heart is turned within me. So your insides, right? Your bowels, your insides, my heart, meaning your mind. The Hebrew word there is lab. The inner thoughts are turned within me. Pretty much you're going crazy. You're restless. For I have grievously rebelled. Abroad the sword bereaveth. At home there is as death. And bereaveth meaning to make childless. So on the outside you have death, right? People are being slain. And in the inside you have death. People are starving to death, right? People are dying of diseases. So there's no relief anywhere. They have verse 21, they have heard that I sigh. There is none to comfort me. All mine enemies have heard of my trouble. Right? So all these nations round about. Because remember, at this point, you still had the Ammonites, right? You had the Edomites, you had the Moabite, like they were still around. The Philistines, the Egyptians. It says they are glad that thou hast done it. Thou wilt bring the day that thou hast called, and they shall be like unto me. So in our mornings, we were pretty much asking the Lord to say that, look at the condition we're in now, and these nations about us are happy about it, right? So the day that you promised, right? Keep that. Bring that day to come to pass, where you bring this upon them, where they are now in the condition we're in. You know, just like we're destroyed, just like we're in this low state, bring that upon them, as they have looked upon us in our state like this. Verse 22, let all their wickedness come before thee, and do unto them as thou hast done unto me for all my transgressions. So we're going through this now, but Lord, remember theirs too, you know, and bring that destruction upon them just as you did to us. For my sighs are many, and my heart is faint. And this is the end of Lamentations, the first chapter. So as you saw, it's pretty much going into a lamentation. It's all about mourning, you know, and just reflecting on the state of our people at this time, which was a very, very devastating and stressful time. Okay. Anyway, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.